It was not in New York, you guys. I'm wearing a Yankees cap. That doesn't mean it was in New York, you guys. Stop being weird. This was a tournament. This was, oh, what was it called? Yeah, no, but Fox was in that area. It was it doesn't say New York. What do you mean? It doesn't say New York. I'm wearing a Yankees cap. Anyway, whatever. I'm not sure, but it was the other tournament in Massachusetts at the time. I don't remember, but anyway, whatever. This is the first game that I ever won against a Grandmaster. This is a game that I played against Alexander Yevgenyevich Strapunsky. When I was growing up, when I was 8 to 9 years old, a lot of people have asked me, how did I get better at chess? The internet was in the early, it was sort of in its infancy in many ways. There were a couple of chess sites, but there wasn't a lot of chess online. So I played a lot of tournaments over the board. This was a game 30 event. Now, again, when you look at the hotspots for chess in America, the two biggest hotspots, of course, COVID has affected it greatly, but the two hotspots are New York City and Dallas, Texas. This was over the board. Yeah, this was over the board. This was a game 30. Now, if you live in Dallas, there's a Dallas Chess Club. I think at least like 2 or 3 days a week they have a game 30 event, so you can play 4 games of game 30. Both players get 30 minutes. Games go 1 hour. The tournament lasts about 4 hours. You play 4 games. So when I was young, and this was in 1998 when I was really improving, I played something like 900 games in 1 year. I think I played on average 3 or 4 games per year. Now, there was someone who was way ahead of me, I think it was, and so forth. But the point is that I would go in, my stepfather, he would finish work, he'd finish his lessons around like 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. He would come back home to White Plains, pick me up, and he would drive into New York City, and I would play at the Marshall Chess Club at least like 2 or 3 times every single week. So this game is from 1998. This was the first game that I ever won against a Grandmaster. At the time, I believe I was 10 years old. Yeah, I was 10 years old. I want to say that this was in March. I don't have my old games database, so I can't date check this, but my guess is this was in March, because I think in April or May of that year, I think I went and played Land of the Sky. At any rate, whatever, let's keep going. So e4, c5, knight f3. I played e6. Now, I don't remember what my system was, why I played e6 exactly. I think the reason I played e6 might have been because, much like Sardoche knew that Rain Wilson was going to play b3, I knew that Strapunsky was going to play c3 and transpose this into an Alpin or an advanced French. So I suspect that's the reason, because honestly, let me think for a second. What was my system? Now I remember. Yes. So when I was 10 years old, I think at the time I was playing this system. Here in America, we were referred to it as the Scheveningen system. If there are the Galanka folks in chat, they will know that, of course, the correct line is Scheveningen. So I think at the time I was playing the Scheveningen variation in the Sicilian. So that, I think, was my idea. If they played the open. That's not right either. Okay, whatever, dude. Whatever. It's all the same. Anyway, okay, c3. So I played d5. He trades. It goes d4. So we end up in the situation, which is kind of, it's turned from a Sicilian into a French. Basically, it's gone from Alpin to kind of a tertiary variation of the French. So knight c6, bishop e3. I take. He takes. I go knight f6, bishop e2, bishop e7, castle. This, by the way, is something very similar we're seeing in the game between Voyboy and Sardoche yesterday in Twitch Rivals. Knight d2, bishop e6, knight b3, queen d7, rook e1. Also, you guys, again, quite similar to what we've seen before. Also, when I was giving Hutch a lesson 2 days ago, you reach a common concept of the isolated queen pawn here, where you have a knight that's blockading the pawn. So long term, this pawn could become strong, but at the moment it's a little bit of a weakness here. So rook f d8 takes. And again, as you see, you guys, chess is a very tricky game because there are ups and downs. So in this position, knight takes is actually, I believe, a good move that is played here by Strapunsky, but in a blitz game, I probably would never consider it. That being said, it has some sense, because if you guys remember, when I was giving Hutch a lesson 2 days ago, I told him, if there are some situations where taking makes sense, and you give black the protected pawn in the center, if you have a light square bishop that can create threats, or you have a play on the e5. So bishop g5 is played here. I go e5 again. White's idea is to trade the bishop for the knight and go bishop g4 and attack towards the queen on d7. So I go e5, bishop f1, h6, bishop h4, a6 again. Pretty much a logical move. I want to stop bishop b5, where white can remove the knight and win the pawn on e5. Okay, queen c2, I go rook a c8 here. Well, I mean, I have the moves, but I remember parts of this game. I don't remember this game from start to finish, but I remember parts of it. Rook a c8, rook a d1, I go b5 here, trying to expand on the queen side, basically prevent white from attacking my center. Right now I have 2 pawns in the center. They're either very strong or very weak. Now objectively I think white is quite a bit better. Let me see, what does it say? It says plus 0.8, so white is quite a bit better here. But it revolves around these central pawns, and right now the knights kind of defend them, but you see both rooks are aiming at them, and white can even remove this knight on f6, which guards the pawn on d5. So it's good, but it's also dangerous. So queen g6, queen e6, rook d3 is played. So now Shapunsky goes for the he goes for the rook lift to g3. Maybe rook f3 is also moved with bishop d3. Go queen f7, queen f5, knight h7. We trade, and now as you can tell, it's still, I think, still quite good for white, but some of the pressure has been relieved because now there are no queens on the board, and even though these pawns maybe are weak, if I get the knight back to f6, I can guard. So knight c5, I go rook a8, h4, knight f6, f3, stops the pawn push, creates space for the king. Also, you'll notice that the knight can't jump anywhere. Pawn dominates the knight as well, so it's very, very good for white objectively. So I go g5, we trade. Now here, rook e8. I think somewhere around here is where Shapunsky starts to go wrong. He plays b4, which of course creates a bastion. The knight on c5 is planted by the pawn on b4, and you can also go a4 at some point, maybe to try and attack towards these weak pawns on b5 and a6. So I go king d6, rook d1 is played. I go a5, he goes takes, and now I think I'm lost. But again, remember, you guys, this is not a classical game of chess. This was a game 30. So because it was game 30, you at some point players start to get low on time and you start seeing blunders. So I go a5, sort of panicking a little bit. I think at this point I mean, I don't remember, obviously, it's too many years ago, but it's kind of hard to play because when you look at this position, you see like it's a very tricky situation. My knight can't really move, this knight can't move, this knight is a real problem, these pawns are really bad, and my king is under fire. So white has pretty much the ideal setup for pieces. So I go a5, takes, I go rook takes a2, and now here Shapunsky blunders. He goes rook c3, and he misses it. Now again, I was not a GM at the time, but knight b7 here, king c7, and now rook to c1 or rook to c3, and both moves are winning. So if I take, he takes with the bishop, and I'm losing material. And if I go rook e6, knight a5, and now the pin is just deadly here towards the knight on c6. But again, even though I was 10 years old and not great at chess, I did not miss tactics even at the age of 10, because after rook c3, as you guys see from the evaluation, it's a big blunder because, of course, obviously, even at 10 I was a genius. So I played knight to d4 here, and the evaluation bar, as you guys see, has completely swung around. It went from completely winning for white to being better for black. And the reason that this is so bad is because now not only do I break the pin, so like if you take the rook, I obviously have a check and I win the rook on c3, but also you have no pressure. So even if you throw in a check, I can just very quietly sidestep. And again, if you take, I move the knight, but if you don't take the rook, I can move my rook next move, and now I've got a great bastion on d4 with my own knight on d4, which can't move. You don't see the bar, but you see the evaluation. You guys see the evaluation numbers here up top, so you do see that. So basically this it goes from being completely fine for white. I know I don't have the right setup for this, I'm sorry you guys, but you see the numbers. But let's go back. So this is my point. Look at the numbers now, you guys. Go back here, you see the numbers. It says plus 4.92. so knight b7 is a winning move for white here. In fact, rook c1 is also a good move, because if rook c1, I can't go knight d4 because takes here, you take, and I'm behind. You have a bishop and a knight versus a rook and knight versus a rook, knight, and a bishop, so you're behind by one bishop. Numbers are very big. Not, I mean, it's okay, stop making the pun. Anyway, the point is knight b7 and rook c1 are winning. Again, both players getting low on time. He goes rook c3, and now I go knight to d4, and now as you guys see, it goes from good for white to minus 0.07, and it's playable. So he checks, I go here, and now he blunders, he takes, and I think Shapunsky just blundered that after pawn takes rook c6, I could go to e5. And the reason is that in this position, again, it's very hard. If you move your bishop back to f1, for example, I can just play something like rook to b8, or maybe even knight to d7. Both moves are playable, and I've got a great bastion on d4, and I also can maybe play g4 at some moment, try to get in towards the white king with a lot of knight jumps potentially. so it's very hard to play. Instead, I think he was very low on time here, and he went rook d4. I take, he goes rook c6, and I think he just missed that I don't have to go to these squares. If I go to either f5 or f7, the knight comes in and forks the king and the rook basically, but I can very quietly go king e5. And the problem is now if white plays like rook f6, takes bishop e8, this pawn is going. I go d3, idea to go d2 and d1, and white really has no way to stop the pawn. I mean, there is a way you can go bishop b5, d2, bishop e2, but now I just go check and I make a queen, and this should be pretty cleanly winning here for black. Secondly, if you think, okay, I can go king f1, so that on d2 I go king e2 and I stop the pawn, it makes sense. But if you go king f1 here, I now go rook a1 check first. King can't come up here because the pawn holds a square, and now I go d2 and I just win because the rook guards the square and the rook holds this square, so you don't even have a bishop a4 idea either, and it's completely winning. So instead he goes knight to c5. Now it's still very tricky, mind you, because the knight comes back. The king is a little bit airy here, like knight d3 check, king f5 g4 ideas with pins. It's still very complicated. So I play rook e7, goes knight d3, king f5, and now he goes knight c1. He doesn't go g4 here because after king g6, I'm now threatening the ladder checkmate with rook e1 potential, and the king is cut off by this rook on a2. All these squares around the king are very open here. So he goes knight c1, I go rook e1, king h2, I go rook a1, and now it starts to fall apart because, as you see, I use the double stack on the 8th rank to create mating threats, and now he blunders with knight e2, rook h1, king g3, knight to h5 check, hitting the king, king f2, and I go rook a to f1 for the checkmate on the back rank with the two rooks on h1 and f1. And I won this game. This was the first game that I ever won against a Grandmaster, and it was in 1998. As I've said before, I played Shapunsky many times. He is still alive, by the way. Someone asked. Yeah, I checked him out on the board. This was a game 30, so like in game 30s back in those days, also, you guys, you didn't get extra time. You played 30 minutes, no increment, none of this modern day nonsense where you can gain time on every move. It's just straight up 30 minutes. You get no extra time. So when players get low, you just make quick moves. It's nice that he didn't resign. I'm not sure that he saw the mate, actually, because we were both very low on time here. But yeah, so this was the first game that I ever won against a Grandmaster in 1998. Yeah, did I say something else? Yeah, it was in 1998. So really good game. It was a fun game. I did go on to beat him a little bit later in this tournament called Land of the Sky, which was in Asheville, North Carolina. But again, really nice guy. I played him many times, and as I mentioned earlier, I won't do it right now because we're going to cover the match, but I did beat him in a tiebreaker to win my first US chess championship overall in 2004. So yeah, was he salty about losing? No, I don't think so. Definitely not salty. So all right, you guys, yeah, so let's what's this? Oh right, there's an article as well. Let me see, is this an article? Not sure. At any rate, what I was gonna say is that Shapunsky is only 51. He's got a lot of time on this world. Yeah, Shapunsky was young, but you know, the other thing that I would say about Shapunsky, again, that reminds you how fragile life is that when I played him, no, this is not at 10, this is when we played in 2004 in the US Championship, but at the time, he had actually had a really bad car accident. I think maybe like 2 months before the 2005 US Championship, held in 2004. But he had a really bad accident. The reason that he was wearing sunglasses because I think he had come very close to losing an eye when he was in a car crash. So it wasn't like it wasn't some idea of like intimidation. He literally was in a really bad car accident. And so that's why he had glasses, because he could have lost an eye. I heard it was really bad. At any rate, he didn't. He is still around. He still is teaching chess, I believe, in New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken. But very nice guy, someone I have a lot of respect for. Someone who's certainly playing him so many times in various tournaments in New York City. Certainly helped my progress. So yeah, great guy.